Hello, thank you for joining in today's roundtable. I'm joined with some colleagues and friends today, and today we're talking about everything sustainability. My name's Dave Napton. I'm Associate Head of School here at the Engineering School at the University of Sunderland. On my left here, we have Aidan Bowes. Aidan, could you introduce yourself? Tell us what you do and why you're here today.
Yeah, so my name's Aidan Bowes. I'm a lecturer here in the Faculty of Technology at the University of Sunderland, and I'm going to be the programme leader for the new Sustainable Engineering programme. Which is why I'm here to talk about sustainable engineering and how important it is.
And Aidan?
I'm Aidan Roach. I'm a mechanical engineer for Suez R&R UK, and I'm part of the rotating equipment team at Suez in the national team. Spend a lot of time doing failure investigations and maintenance optimisation for system.
Brilliant. And I'm sure as we go through this talk we'll hear more about Suez, what they do. Yep. It's a brand I certainly wasn't familiar with, but one that's actually very close to all of us here in the North East. So thank you ever so much for taking some time out there and joining us. That's fantastic. Back to Aidan Bowes. This is very confusing for me having two Aidans, one each side. As a Dave, I'm not used to this, but I'll get the hang of it. We're talking about sustainability. Now, I know sustainability means different things to different people in different contexts. You've talked about sustainable engineering programme here at the university. Can you set that in context for us very briefly? And what does sustainability mean for the purpose of this talk and what we're here for today?
Well, unfortunately, it's really hard to kind of sum it up in a nutshell. Sustainability is going to be a huge thing going forward. Mm-hmm. So sustainability it's really important in terms of ensuring that there's going to be jobs for engineers in the future, ensuring that there's going to be a sustainable flow of new engineers coming into the workforce. It's really important in terms of sustainable energy. Mm-hmm. So people thinking about wind turbine design and how can we make power from tidal energy and stuff like that. But it's also less obvious things. So it's if we design and manufacture a car, what happens to that car when we're all done with it and it can't drive anymore and it's failed all its MOTs and what have you? Do you just throw it in a landfill? Well, hopefully not, and there's a lot of questions within sustainable engineering that we don't have answers for right now. But it's one thing that we want to do at the University of Sunderland, I feel quite passionately about, is thinking about where the jobs are going to be for students in 5 or 10 years' time. And those jobs might not exist yet. There might be job roles that we couldn't think of, we couldn't imagine yet. But we're trying to look ahead and we're trying to think in terms of what's going to be important and how can we prepare those students for their careers in the future. So really, I think that's what sustainability is in the concept of the programme here.
So it's a huge topic that I think is going to impact everybody, whether they realise it or not. And I think what you're saying is sustainability is about doing the right thing for the environmental, ecological, looking after the planet, but it's also sustainability of longevity of income for people and the economy, and it touches all these areas.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you buy something and you don't want to use it once and throw it away. It could be something like an electric toothbrush, which costs, 60, 80 quid it can be now. Nobody wants to spend that much money on a toothbrush and throw it away after one use. Or it could be something like a giant jet engine, which, you might buy for £20 million and you want it to last, So we can think about things in terms of maintenance. How can we maintain things to use them for longer?
And get the very best out of them and for that longest time.
Exactly. Yeah. It's reduce, reuse, recycle for a reason. Yeah. And sustainability does kind of follow that flow.
Yeah. Interesting you mentioned recycling there. I'm going to bring other Aidan in. So we've mentioned landfill there, we've mentioned recyclability. Could you just give us a quick overcap? I mean, it's fantastic to welcome you back, particularly as an alumni as well, which we mustn't forget to mention, but it wasn't that long ago you were on our engineering programmes yourself, so you've got that inside knowledge as well. But what is it that you do for Suez and why are you here today?
So at the minute I work part of the rotating equipment team, but I've had a few different roles in Suez. So when I first joined, I was part of the asset management team, which is about a lot about sustainability. So you're looking at the life cycle of various assets, whether that's the full plant or whether the full system, if you like, or individual components of that system, whether it's fans or whatever. So you've got to fully understand its starting life, its original carbon footprint, how is that going to affect us, its efficiency, So you might pay a bit more for something that's a bit more efficient, but you pay a bit more in capital expenditure and saving your operational becomes more sustainable in business. And then you've got to assess your obsolescence as well, your end of life. Is it how recyclable is it? Is it just going to go to landfill? Can you melt it down and reuse it? How much virgin material are you going to use in doing that? You've got to fully understand the full life cycle of these items. So from that asset management team, I moved into rotating equipment, which focuses more specifically on steam turbines and sort of larger process fans. So at the minute we're looking at sort of long-term contracts for maintenance for steam turbines, understanding what risk profile we have with them. So you can't just go around fixing things. Again, it's not a sustainable business. It would bankrupt a company. So you've got to know what you can fix, how not fixing it will affect you, but also how you can sort of mitigate from that risk the best you can. And that leads to a lot of innovative ideas on how to complete maintenance schemes. It's a lot to do with reliability centred maintenance. You've got to understand the full process. You've got to understand the system and how that component will affect other systems.
And I think what's really difficult to convey to the viewers, I had the fortune, and it was an absolute pleasure to come around and look around sewers quite a few years ago. It was before you were there, but I mean I've seen some industrial plants in my time. The scale of this is just phenomenal, and I think it's worth mentioning as well. You're obviously involved in the maintenance and for sewers. Maximising the use of that asset and getting the most productivity and everything out of it as well. But from a sustainability point of view, can you just explain what sewers do?
Oh, sorry, yeah. So Suez waste management company. So we take in people's black bin waste in my department anyway, and we combust that to produce heat, which powers a heat recovery steam generator, which is a fancy way of saying a boiler, to produce steam, to turn a turbine to produce electricity. Like you say, we're quite local, so we've got 4 plants in the northeast, one at Wilton in Redcar, and technically 3 in Teesside, but they're all on the same site. And I know Wilton's produces about 49.9 megawatts of megawatt hours of power. So we're talking about a lot of energy for the scale we're at. And we do a lot of our process about cleaning of those gases that are produced to make sure we're environmentally A compliant and B trying to do the best for the area.
One of the things I found after my visit there, it completely changed my relationship with what I put in my bin, in the black bin. And every time I put the bin out on a Wednesday night, it is these days, to be collected, my thought would often go back to just seeing these huge, vast piles of rubbish that then get combusted. But what was really reassuring was that all of that is done so cleanly, and actually the harmful bit at the end of your process is such a tiny amount compared to the start. So it's fantastic to see the work that's done, to take all of our rubbish right across the northeast, turn that into useful energy that we all need, for heating and lighting our homes and charging our mobile phones and everything in between, and vehicles now as well, and doing such a good job of that, being so environmentally conscious, and managing that asset, but also doing your bit for the sustainability and things as well. A couple of things I just wanted to pick up on from the conversation there. So we've mentioned life cycle, and you mentioned it as well, Aidan, about how everything we do sort of and use, those products have a start, they have a life, and they also have an end of life. And you're very much involved with the end of life part and the recycling. But I think increasingly as well, it's worth highlighting the great work that engineers are doing at the start of that process to recognise, well, actually, we're not just about designing something, the fastest car, the jet that can fly the furthest. We're already considering now, right at the concept of that product, what's going to happen in 20, 30, 50 years' time when that's...
Well, it's ingrained in everything we teach, isn't it? I mean, many years ago, they used to teach on engineering courses that the span of a product life cycle was cradle to grave. So it was from its birth till its death, its end of life. But that's not really what we teach now, and it's not what we will be teaching going forward. I'm sure what we teach now is cradle to cradle. It's a full life cycle. The end of life, it's not as final. We don't want to throw things in landfill. We don't want to waste really good natural resources. So it's interesting to hear kind of what you're doing at Suez, Aidan, where you're given things that would have reached the grave and had their end of life and maybe just been buried and put in a hole. And you're using that to make useful energy and actually getting a sustainable use out of that, which is, it's really good to hear. And it really ties in with kind of what we want to teach going forward, you know, and it aligns with sort of what we want our students to know, because it's going to be so important as resources start to dwindle.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, one very simple, basic example I always think of is, you know, if you see me around campus, I've always got my my refillable water bottle these days. But it's not that long ago that we're using disposable plastic bottles. And if you look at a disposable plastic bottle now, and I'm sure it's, you know, Suez have had involvement in things like this. It's the engineers that have developed the materials and they've developed the processes. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's I opened one recently and I took the top off, and the bottle itself almost crumpled in my hand. It was optimized to the nth degree to put as little material in there as possible. It's engineers that have done that. And then just over the last 6 months or a year, I've noticed that all the bottle tops now are integral, so you can't actually take them off and lose them, and they're all the same colour, which will make recycling easier. So that's one area where design is designing for end of life, and you know, that's just a simple example that everybody's aware of. But whether we realise it or not, that's all over the place.
It's interesting you raise that, because a lot of that's driven by legislation, and it has to be. It forces us as engineers to be inventive. How can we solve this new problem that the government, the legislators have put in front of us? We need to do this now. We've got to adapt ourselves. We've got to be flexible. We've got to change. We've got this manufacturing process which is going to cost us a lot of money to change. How do we adapt what we make to fit our processes? It forces ingenuity.
It's really interesting that you say that, actually, because the legislation going forward is going to drive a huge amount of change in engineering, I think. So I know we were discussing earlier that in the past, how sustainable you were really depended on your personal ethics and how sustainable you wanted to be. And often you'd find companies and engineers who would make something, a product or a process, and then maybe try and backtrack to demonstrate that it was in fact renewable when maybe it wasn't quite renewable or sustainable. But now there's going to be so much government legislation coming in. You know, we're not going to be able to drive petrol cars soon, for example, and engineers are just going to have to adapt to meet that demand, and it's just going to have to be a skill set that we all have going forward, because there's not going to be a choice. It's not going to be about personal ethics.
No, we're sat here in Sunderland in 2023 having this discussion, and it was very recently. It was in the news that our own government have extended deadlines around sustainability goals, net zero, and all these things as well. And I'm sure part of that, you know, I'm not making a political statement at all, but part of that is about infrastructure needs to be ready, and it's engineers that do that. You know, we see in the engineering press as well that for the nation to reach its economic potential, we're short on degree qualified engineers. So it's really, really important for people to recognise that there's good well-paid jobs there and in high number. It's something we need to do for national and global importance.
Understanding and making processes sustainable, there is a clear gap in skill sets for and a clear gap in the market for anybody who wanted to be an engineer and work in that kind of industry to move into. Yeah. And it's not necessarily just in businesses like Aidan's, which are sustainable by design, but it's in other businesses as well that aren't traditionally sustainable, such as automotive. You know, some automotive suppliers are now starting to, I don't know if they have to, but they are starting to look at recycled steel as a source for making components. And again, you know, this is all about the sustainable process, and in areas where you wouldn't necessarily think it would be, it is, and it's going to be even bigger. Yeah.
Go on.
No, it's. I was just going to say, the legislation obviously drives a lot, but it's the social consciousness of people as well. We've got we've got personal ethics, but we've also got a combined social conscience, which drives a lot of this, which sometimes even drives legislation. And we have seen that social conscience change and develop for one reason or another over the last 5-10 years to force companies, maybe it's not through legislations, but just by guilt.
Yeah, you've answered the question there I was about to ask actually, but picking up on that point, you now see companies using their sustainability achievements as a differentiator, as come and buy our product because it's sustainable, and all the rest of it. Did you always set out to work in sustainability?
No, as often.
So how did you find yourself where you are? If that's not too personal a question.
It's not. I knew a person who worked at Suez, and I guess like everybody else, I didn't know who they were, what they did. So I went and had a look around, and I worked with them. It was during my final year project.
You did it with the company though, didn't you?
Yeah. So I worked with their technical director, and he explained their problem, and that was what my final year project was based around. And off the back of that, I applied a job there, and never looked back really.
And from your involvement in there, as a relatively recent graduate in the last 4 to 5 years, how have you seen all the things we're talking about? Are you just seeing that that's becoming more and more to the fore? Do you think sustainability was always there? Do you think it was throughout your programme?
I think where we look at sustainability maybe has changed. It's always been at the forefront, but the way we understand it and the way we push it has definitely changed. And the way we understand it as well. I mean, you're talking about engineers coming through, and that's only getting worse. We've had
the lack of engineers coming through, the shortage,
and there's less and less people for whatever reason, and we all here know that diversity in teams make better functioning teams, and with a lack of extra people come through, those teams are getting less diverse and less creative, and not to say they're not as creative, but it puts a strain on that we maybe don't see at the forefront. It's in the background.
And I think it's fair to say you'll be using your traditional mechanical engineering skills, but you're using them in a certain context and for a certain aim. And it's a real hope of mine that people see sustainability as a career option to get into. And it might attract a more diverse sector of student and things as well. People that maybe wouldn't have considered engineering might think, well, I don't really want to be an engineer, but I'd love to work in sustainability, and I can do it that way.
Sustainability it's an interest. It'll be an interesting course because it needs to be. If it's not, in everything everyone does. Whether that's sustainable business, sustainable environment, sustainable whatever you're doing, it all needs to be something you can keep doing. Otherwise, your career is going to be quite short-lived. I'm afraid. But it's going to be at the forefront of everything. Whether we talked about the strain on various assets, whether that's national grids, gas systems, whatever that is. There's a lot of engineering jobs poised to be created through lack of infrastructure, or maybe it's not maintained infrastructure, or developing infrastructure, whether that's there's a lot of talk around small to medium reactors, various companies I should say developing. There's a lot of things, whether it's carbon capture as well, that's going to be huge in a couple of years, and that's entirely sustainability. At the minute there's no profit in that. That's purely a cost mitigation exercise for people until the government works something out on how to make it a profitable thing. There's a lot of jobs going to be in sustainability, and we need to prepare a workforce for it.
And I think those companies coming into that, there'll be the traditional companies who have been in power generation and things as well, but as well I can almost sense that it's providing the opportunity for other companies to innovate and maybe diversify and get into some areas that they've not worked in previously.
Yeah, it is. It's gonna have a big effect on all, like you said, the big players are going to find a way to deal with it. It's the smaller companies that will struggle, that might have to innovate between themselves, consolidate resources and say, we can't afford to build one of these plants, but between the 5 of us we might.
And
it's about that collaboration as well. It's going to be a really interesting time in engineering over the next 5 years.
It is incredibly interesting, and actually I feel like it touches on sort of what we were saying earlier, in that we're trying to prepare engineers for jobs that we've never heard of, you know, and we think the best way to do that is with this sustainable engineering program. But kind of one of the things that we want to make sure we do with this program is make sure they've got the core mechanical engineering skills, the core electrical engineering skills. They know about engineering, but they're also looking at sustainability and how that's going to fit in a context with the industry that's there and with the industry that might exist in the future that we can't even predict. You know, so it sounds like that's sort of on track to do that.
Yeah.
And what sort of experience might a student on that program, what might their learning experience look like?
Oh, well, it would be a fantastic experience for Siggy, because
sure
I'll
it
be
will.
the program leader.
Excellent.
But yeah, so the learning experience for all those students. So in first year, I'll kind of go through each year individually. In first year, it'll be similar to the rest of the engineering students. So we make sure that all of our students have a similar first year, so they all learn the same core skills. We know it's increasingly important in industry that companies want engineers that can do everything, or a little bit of everything. They don't just want a mechanical engineer that can't touch wires and doesn't know how to wire up a battery. They don't just want an electrical engineer who can't do any design. And going forward, I don't think they'll want any engineer that knows nothing about sustainability. So make sure that we ingrain the core skills, the mathematics, the physics, the mechanics, the design, the electronics in the first year. After that, the students then go on to specialise a little bit. There's some modules where they'll work together, they'll work in groups, they'll work with companies and go out to companies and do projects for them and actually get some industrial experience. But they'll start to specialise. In sustainability, they'll do the sustainable design modules. They'll do some more sustainable management modules and process management modules, where they'll try and understand kind of Industry 4 and how sustainability fits in there. They'll have an option to go out in an industry and do a placement, where they can go and actually work for a year in a local company. And when they come back, they'll then focus on their project, which is really sort of their chance to shine and demonstrate, you know, something that they really feel passionate about and want to work on. And they can do quite a substantial project on that. And they'll do some other modules that'll prepare them for more senior roles when they graduate. So management, project management, that kind of thing, as well as the sustainability, manufacturing processes, Industry 4, all of those things, but with a kind of more management sophisticated
Excellent,
sort of
yeah. And you know, I know the program, but the way you're talking, what comes out there is there's an awful lot of crossover and commonality with the other programs as well. So this isn't a dumbed down engineering course. This is about, you know, highly qualified engineers going out and making a valuable contribution to their employers, to themselves, and to society.
This is us very purposefully targeting what we think will be a future skills gap, and demonstrating that we can give engineers expertise in this area. There's certainly nothing I would say is dumbed down about it. It is really going to be at the forefront of kind of what we offer in the future, I think.
And certainly from what Aidan's saying, you know, struggling to recruit engineers and things, you know, that sounds like it'll tick those boxes. Just to finish off, I'm going to put you on the spot and set you a challenge. If you were a student making your choices, maybe considering studying engineering for the first time, particularly with a focus on sustainability, what one piece of advice would you give them?
Read as much as you can, everything and everything. But the more you read, the more you'll learn, and the less you'll know.
strange oxymoron. I don't agree with that. I think the more you'll know, but then you'll realise the more there is to know as well. Absolutely. No, that's a good point. And it's for me. I'll come to you in a minute. But for me, the kind of the thing I want to sort of leave people thinking about is that we all want to do our bit for the planet. And that might just be increasing our recycling, it might be awareness of something else. But as engineers, I like to think of it as we have a superpower, and we can actually put those skills right into the start of that life cycle, that we can not worry about solving the problems that you're solving, but just remove them, you know, sort out, biodegradable materials, so they don't need, combusting at the end of their life and that kind of thing. There's so many opportunities. So I like to think of our students leaving here as little superheroes that can use that skill set to solve all of these world problems, sustainability and others. What about yourself, Aidan?
Well, my advice firstly would be to pick the sustainable engineering program, but some genuine advice, because I remember being 18 and not knowing what I wanted to be when I grew up, would be don't panic. Mm-hmm. Because maybe the job that you're doing now doesn't currently exist. And so really there's no way that you'll be able to tell what you'll be doing in the next 5 years. Yeah. But just make sure that you're on a course that interests you. Hopefully that's engineering, and that you're doing something that you think is going to make a difference.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you both very much, gentlemen, for giving up some time out of your busy schedule and things. Thank you to our viewers as well for joining us for this roundtable event. If there's anything that you've heard us talking about that piques your interest, you might be a company that want to engage with us and work with us on delivery of the new programme. You may be looking to recruit our students. You may be that person who wants to come and be one of those students. We'd love to hear from you. Keep in touch with the university. All the information for open days and things is on our website, and we look forward to meeting you in person soon. Thank you.